Hi everyone, Ravi this side. Welcome to Engineering Adda. So today in this video, we are going to discuss the differences between the jar and war files. So if you are in the software industry, you have come across these terms, jar files and the war files. And this is one of the most asked interview question. Okay, so we are going to discuss what is the difference between the jar and war files. And this is the final comparison between the jar and war files. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll try to discuss basic differences between the jar and war files, and then practically we'll try to create two Spring Boot applications. One of those application will convert to the jar files and the other one will convert to the war file, and then we'll see how the jar and war files are structured, how the jar and war files are looking like, and we'll try to extract out the jar and war files and then see what are inside it. Okay, and then practically we'll try to deploy both of the jar and var files and then see what is the difference between their deployment as well. So everything we are going to discuss in this video about jar and var files. So let's get started for that. So let me try to go to the next slide and try to show you what is the purpose of the jar and var files. So first of all, let me try to tell you that jar file stand for the Java archive and the var file stand for the web archive. Okay, now jar files are primarily used to package and distribute Java library classes and the resources. So this jar files is used to package the Java libraries, classes and the resources. They are commonly used for standalone Java applications, libraries and the command line tools. So when you are developing a standalone Java application, then it is best suited to convert that application in the form of jar files. Okay, and then do the necessary work like deployment and all those things. Now coming to the var files, the var file are specifically designed for packaging and deploying web application. So here you can see the differences. The jar files is for the standalone Java application. Now coming to the var file, it is for the web application. Now the next term is they contains this var files contains all the component of a web application including servlet, JSP files, HTML pages, JavaScript, CSS and the configuration files. So apart from the web component of a web application, they also include this other component like servlet, JSP files, HTML, JavaScript, CSS and the configuration files. So this is the purpose of jar and var files. So jar file is for the packaging of the Java related classes and the resources. Var file is for developing the web application and packaging the web component of the web application and also servlet, JSP, HTML and others component as well. Whereas the jar file is for the development of standalone Java application. Okay, so this is the purpose of both of them. Now let me try to go to the next slide and try to show you the differences between the jar and var files on the basis of their structures, how they are structured. Okay, so let me try to go to the next slide and here we come. So what is the basic difference between the jar and var file when coming to their structure? So the jar file are typically structured as a flat archive, meaning they contain a collection of Java class files and resources organized within a directory structure. So inside the jar file, we have a directory structure that contains the Java class files, okay, and the Java resources. They don't have a specific directory hierarchy for the web related component like web pages or the servlet. Now, in the case of var files, it is well defined directory structure that follows the Java Enterprise Edition specification. They include directory like webinf for the configuration file like web.xml. Okay, and apart from that, they also contains the folder structure where it will keep the Java classes and the external jar files. And apart from them, they also have a folder structure where they will keep the web component like HTML, JSP, JavaScript, CSS, and all those things. Okay, so this is the difference between the jar and var files basis upon their structure. So in the jar files, we have only limited folder structure where we'll keep the Java related resources. When coming to the WAR files, we have the well defined directory structure where we'll keep the Java related files in one folder and web related files in one folders. And apart from the web related files, we have the configuration files and we have the web INF folders. So all those things are very structured here in the WAR files. Now coming to the next slide, how we deploy the jar and WAR files. So coming to the jar files are generally used for standalone applications or the libraries that are not meant for web deployment. They are usually executed using the java minus jar command or added to the class path. So the deployment of jar file is very simple. We can create a Spring Boot application. We can convert that Spring Boot application in the form of jar files, and through the java minus jar command we can run that jar files and we can see how it is working. But in the case of war files, uh, we need external servers or web servers where we can deploy our war files, like Apache Tomcat or Wildfly or WebLogic. So in the case of war file deployment, we need a server where we can deploy our war files. Okay, so let me try to read out for you. WAR files are specifically designed for the deployment in the web servers like Apache Tomcat, Wildfly, Jet is also there, WebLogic. They are placed in an appropriate directory, usually the web app directory. I will also try to show you what it is talking about when we are going to do the deployment of the WAR files. What is this web app directory? Okay, of the web servers, and the server deploy and manages the web application. So this is the basic difference between the jar and war files based upon their deployment. Okay, so let me try to go to the next slide and try to show you some other differences like main entry point. So in the case of jar files, we have like jar files may contains a main class attribute in their manifest file specifying the class that serves as the entry point when executing the jar file. This is the common for executable jars. Okay, so when we convert a Spring Boot application or any application in the form of jar files, there is a main class which is also an entry point for that jar files. Okay, and coming to the war files, war files do not have a single main entry point like executable jars. They contain web component, servlet and the JSPs. They are invoked based upon the HTTP request received by the web servers. Okay, so this is the difference between their entry point. So the jar files have one main class which is also entry point for that, and the web servers or war files have the servlet and JSP, and based upon that servlet and JSP we get the HTTP request from the web servers, and then we'll uh, go through the application. Okay, now let me try to go to the next slide and summarize the whole differences. So in summary, we can say that jar files are general purpose Java archive files used for packaging libraries and the standalone applications, while war files are specifically used for packaging and deploying web application with a predefined directory structured and a focus on the web related components. The choices between the jar and war file depend upon the type of Java application that you are developing and how you intend to deploy it. So this is the basic difference between the jar and war files. Now what I will do, I will try to go to the IntelliJ IDEA and try to create two Spring Boot applications, and I will try to convert one Spring Boot application in the form of jar file, second one in the form of war file, and then we'll see how they are looking like, and we'll try to extract out the content inside the jar and var files, and also we'll try to see how their structure is looking like, and then finally we'll try to deploy the jar and var files. Okay, so let me try to go to the IntelliJ. So here you can see I already have opened the IntelliJ, and here I'm using the IntelliJ Ultimate version. Okay, so directly using the IntelliJ Ultimate version, we can create the Spring Boot application. Okay, so you have to go to this file and go to the new, go to the project, and here you will find this option of Spring Initializer. Okay, and directly you can create your Spring Boot application here. If you are using the IntelliJ community version or you are using any others IDE, then what you can do, you can go to the Spring IO website, and then there it will open up the same page where you can create your Spring Boot application. How I am going to do the similar way, you can create the Spring Boot application there itself and download the zip file and then extract out the zip file and then open up that application in any IDE that you are using and start the development. So let me try to create the Spring Boot application here. So let's say this application is sample jar app or something like application. Sample jar Spring Boot application. Okay. Now let me select Maven here, and we are using JDK 18, Java version 17, and this is the jar file that we are creating here. Okay, now go to the next. And if you want to include couple of starter dependency, then you can use it. I'm just going to include the Spring Web and the Lombok. Okay, now create this and open it in a new tab. Now wait for a few seconds, it will try to download all the starter dependency and do the indexing and all. So just load the Maven project here. So wait for few seconds. Now just let it do all those necessary download and configuration. Now let me try to create the second application which will be for the var file. So go to the file, new project, and go to the Spring Initializer again. Now let's say it is a sample var Spring Boot application, something like that. Select the Maven here, and this time we need to select the var file. Now go next, Lombok and Spring Web. So here what we are doing, we are creating a Spring Boot application and we are selecting out the var file. Here you can see, right? You can also create the Java Enterprise Edition application, and that will also look like a web application. And when we'll convert that application in the var file, you will find all the properties of the var files. Okay, so here for our simplicity, what we are doing, we are creating a Spring Boot application. We are selecting the var file so that when we are building this application, it will generate a var file for us. And same in the case of jar file. We have selected the jar file for the previous application. So when we'll build this, the previous application, it will create a jar file for us. Okay. So in the case of var file, there is a two option. Either you can create a simple Spring Boot application and select the packaging as a var, or you can create a Java Enterprise Edition application and then build it to the var file. Now go next. Here let me try to use this is starter dependency, Spring Web and the Lombok. Now create it and open a new tab. So just wait for a few seconds. Load Maven, and let me try to minimize all these things. So it will also take few seconds to download all the starter dependency and do the indexing. I think it is done. So yeah, both of the application are looking good. Let me try to close this application and open up the jar file first. Now coming to the jar file, you can see how the structure of the application is looking like. Okay, so it is a simple Spring Boot application and having a main class. Now coming to the var file, let me try to show you how it is looking like. Go to the source main Java, and here you can see we have one main class which is annotated with @ Spring Boot application, and we have the additional class which is servlet initializer. This shows that this is a web application. Okay, Now this is the how both of the application is looking like. Now let me try to build both of the application and get the jar and var files of this application. So how we can build it? Go to the Maven and go to this execute goals. Now we can do a clean install skipping the test cases. Okay, so skip tests. Now just run it. So it will try to build your application. Once it will be built, here one target folder will be generated, and inside that folder we will get the var file, and same for the jar file we have to do. So just wait for a few seconds. Once it is done, we'll go for the jar file. So here you can see it is built successful, and here you can see we have the target folder created, and inside that we have the var file generated. So copy this var file as of now, and let me try to create one folder here. Go to the desktop, and let me try to create here. So create a folder called jar and var files, jar versus var. Okay, now go inside it and paste this var file that we have generated. Now come here to the jar file or jar application or sample jar Spring Boot application, and we have to build it also. So go to the Maven and go to the Maven goals. Here you have to run the command maven or ambient clean install skipping the test case. Okay, now wait for a few seconds. Again the same thing will happen. One Once the build is successful, here one target folder will be created, and you can see it is created. If you go inside it, you will find your jar file. So copy this jar file and come here to the folder that we have created and paste it out. Now we have the jar and var files ready. Now let me try to extract out this jar file. So right click on it, and okay, so here you can see we have the option of extract files. Extract it out, and here you can see we have one extract folder out of this jar file. You can see the application name is sample jar Spring Boot application. If we'll go inside it, let me show you how this jar file is looking like. How is the folder structure of the jar file is looking like. So go inside it. You can see we have this three folders. One is the boot inf, second is the meta inf, and third is the organization. If we go inside this boot inf, here you can see we have the Java classes and their libraries. You can see this class folder contains all the Java classes. If you go inside it, you can see this. The main class is there. And if you go inside the libraries, all the Java related libraries are here. So the jar file contain the packaging of the Java related resources, either Java libraries, classes. Okay. If you go inside this meta inf, these are the Maven related things are here. Okay, so you can see this POM files are here. Come out of it and go to the organization, and it is something like Spring Boot related things are here. Okay, so you can see this. So basically, what is this jar file is containing? It is containing the classes and the libraries related to the Java files or related to Java. Now come out of it and let me try to extract out the var file. So right click on it and go to this, and here you can see we don't have the option to extract it out. Let me try to add to the archive, and yeah, open it. Now let me try to open this and then see. We are going to see it in the WinArchive. Okay, so here you can see this. Let me try to open it up. So here we have this folder structures. So inside the sample var file, or you can see the var file that we have created out of the Spring Boot application, we have these three folder structures. One is the meta inf, which we were having in the jar file as well, but in the at the place of boot inf we have this web inf in the case of var file. Okay, so in the case of Java jar files we were having the boot inf folder, but in the case of var file we have the web inf. Now let me try to go inside this web inf and show you what all the things are there. So it contains the classes. We'll go inside it. This contains the Java classes and the servlets. Now let me try to come out of it. So this web-inf contains the Java related classes and the web related classes as well, and the servlets. Okay, if we'll go inside the library, it is containing the Java libraries, and here you can see that Tomcat server is also there. Okay, so these are the things that are inside the web inf. If we'll go inside the meta inf, you will see this Maven related things are here, and if you go inside the organization, it is related to the Spring framework. So the basic difference between the folder structure of the jar and var file is the jar file contains the boot inf, which contains the Java related classes and the resources, but in the case of var files we have the web inf, which contains the Java related classes as well as the servlet and the others packages uh, that are related to the web application. But at as of now we don't have the others files like HTML or JSP or CSS, so it does not contain those things here. But if you'll add those things and if you'll try to create the var file through building that application, all those HTML, JSP and CSS files will be here. Okay, so this is the basic difference between the structure of jar and var files. Now let me try to minimize it. So what we have seen here is how the jar files and the var files looking like structurally, and what all the folder structures are there inside the jar and var files, and what are the content inside them. So we have seen all of those things. Now coming to the deployment of this application. Okay, so how we can deploy those jar files and the var files. So in the case of jar files, we have seen that these are the executables files, and through the Java -jar command we can run these files. Okay, so let me try to create one API here inside the application that we have created for the jar files, and then we'll try to again create the jar file after building that application or that API, and then we'll try to execute these jar files through that command and then try to see how it is working. And in the case of var file, what we'll do, we'll try to create one API, and then again we'll build that application and then take out the var file, and then we'll try to deploy that var file to the external server. Okay, so the deployment of both of the application jar and var files we'll see. So let me try to go to the sample Java Spring Boot application first and try to create one API here. So come here, and this is the sample jar Spring Boot application. And if you'll go to the pom.xml file, I already have showed you that we have included the starter dependency. One is web, Spring Web, and the second one is Lombok. So let me try to go to the main class, and here itself we can develop one API. So let me try to do that. So annotate this class with @REST controller, and now let me try to create one method here which is returning the, let's say, public string, and display, and let's say this method is returning uh, jar file or Spring Boot jar application, something like that, or let's say jar file. Okay, now let me try to convert this method in the form of git mapping, and here let me try to provide some mapping, let's say jar. Okay, so what we did, we have created one get API. Okay, and that get API, when we are going to hit it, it will return the uh, jar file as a content, as a string. So let me try to run this application and try to show you. Okay, so just wait a few seconds. So our application is up on the port number 8080, and let me try to go to the browser and try to hit this API that we have developed. So localhost 8080, and then we have jar as a mapping. So here you can see what we are getting. We are getting this jar file string that we have returning from that method or from that API. So here you can see our API is working fine. Okay, so this API, what it is doing, when we are going to hit this API, then we are seeing this content which is returning the jar file. Okay, so this API is working fine. Now what I will do, I will try to rebuild this application, and then again the jar file will be created which will contain this API this time, and then we'll try to execute that jar file or deploy that jar file through that java minus jar command, and then see how it is working. So how we can build it, you have to go to the maven, you have to go to the execute goals, and again you have to run this command. So just run it and then wait for a few seconds. You can see the build is success, and what I will do, either you can uh, do one thing, you can also copy this and put it somewhere, and from there you can run this jar file, or you can open a command prompt where this jar file is located and then run this jar file from there. So we'll do that only. So where it is, so you can see this application is there inside this path. See YouTube Engineering Adda project September, and then we have this application. So we'll go inside that application and come to this jar file location, and there I will open up a command prompt and then run this jar file. Okay, so let me try to go there. So where it is, let me try to go there. Okay, go to the project September, and let me sort by the date, and here you can see we have the simple jar Spring Boot application. If you'll go inside it, inside the target folder, you will find this jar file. Let me try to maximize it. You can see this jar file is here. Now open up a command prompt here and try to execute this jar file. So the command was java minus jar, and then you have to provide the jar name. So the jar name is sample java, sorry, sample jar Spring Boot application, and then we have the version of it, which is 0.0.1 hyphen snapshot.jar. Okay, so you can see this. The command is java minus jar, and then you have to provide the jar file. Just enter it and wait for a few seconds. And here you can see this Spring Boot application is started here. So the deployment of that application is being done using this command, right? So this is the main advantage of the jar file use when we are converting application in the form of jar files. Then through this java minus jar command, through this executables, you can directly run this application or deploy this application. Okay, So that is what we are doing here, but we are this application is failed because this port is already in use. So if we'll come here to the application, so you can see this application is still running. Okay, if we'll go there to this run, yeah, where it is. Okay, let me try to see. You can see here this application is still running, so we need to stop it in order to release the port number 8080. So that is what we did. So we have stopped this application, and now let me try to go there to this command prompt again and try to run this jar file. So hit it. Okay, why it is if this jar file is deleted? Here you can see this jar file is deleted. Let me try to regenerate it. I think something I have did here. Yes, inside this target folder nothing is there. Let me try to again execute these commands, which is maven clean install, and again it will generate the jar file for us. Okay, it is not doing. Okay, let me try to delete this target folder. Okay, so okay, because we have opened a terminal here, it is not deleting the target folder. Let me try to close it out and again go to this IntelliJ and try to delete this target folder, and it is deleted. Now again what we have to do, we have to build this application in order to generate the jar file. So go to this execute maven goals and run this command and wait for a few seconds. Once the jar file is generated, we'll try to run that jar file again. So you can see the jar file build is success, and here the target folder is also created, and we have the jar file ready. And this time you can see our application is not running, so our port number 8080 is free. Now go to this folder location, where it is, yeah, here inside this target, and let me try to open the command prompt again here and then run the command, which is java minus jar, and then you have to provide the jar file name, which was sample jar spring boot application, and then version, and then hyphen snapshot.jar. So just hit enter, and this time you will see that this application is started running, and it is running on the port number 8080. So this is how you can simply deploy your jar files, okay, through this command. Now in this jar in this application we have developed this API, which is hyphen or forward slash jar. While hitting this API, we are getting this jar file as a string. So again, this application is not running. We have deployed our application through this command java minus jar, and this application is running here in this terminal. Now, or you can say this application is running through the jar files. Now go to the browser and try to hit this API again, and then see here you can see we are getting the same result. That means our deployment is successful. So this is how you can deploy a jar file. Now coming to the deployment of a var file, how we can deploy var file. So for that, let me try to go to the application that we have created for the var file. So here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a API here as well, okay, in the var file. And then what we'll do, we'll try to again build this application and again generate the var file in the target folder, and then in that var file it will contain the API that we have developed, and then we'll try to deploy this var file to the external server, and then from there we'll try to hit the API that we have developed. Okay, so this is what we are going to do in the case of var file. Okay, so let me try to go to this main class. So where it is, go to the simple var spring boot application, and let me try to annotate this with REST controller. And here again, let me try to create a API which is get mapping, and let's say this time the URI is var. Okay, and let me try to create a method called public string, and let's say display, and it is returning the var file deployment is successful, something like that. Var file deployment is successful. Okay, so, or what you can say that your var file is deployed successfully, something like that. So what we are returning here in this API is var file deployment is successful. So when we'll hit this API, it will return this string for us. Now we have created this API. Let me try to run this application, and I think, yeah, it will give us the error of the port number because this terminal is running here. So yeah, just wait for a few seconds. You can see this: identify and stop the process that listening to the port number 8080, or configure this application to listen to the another port. Now you can also do that. You can change your port number, but I'm not going to do. Let me try to stop this jar file here, and let me try to run this var file application again. So just wait for a few seconds, and here you can see this time our application is up, and it is up on the port number 8080. This is the default port for the Spring Boot application. Now our var file application is up. Now go there to the browser and try to hit this API. The API was /var. Okay, and here you can see we are able to get the result which is saying that var file deployment is successful. So this API under the var file application is also working fine. Now what is the next step that we have to do? We have to build this application. So how we are building it? Go to the Maven, go to the execute goals, and try to clean install skipping the test case, and wait for a few seconds. It will try to build our application and again generate the var file which includes our API as well. Okay, so once we have our var file, what we can do, we can deploy that var file to the external server. So we have this var file generated here in the target folder, and we can pick this and deploy to the external server. Now what is the external server that we are going to use here for the deployment of the var file? So we are going to use the Apache Tomcat external server. So how we can install it? You have to go to the browser, and you have to go to the site called Apache Tomcat. There is a video on my channel where I have discussed about how to deploy a var file to the external server. You can go and watch it out, and here also I'm going to show you those things as well, how to deploy it. So go to the Apache Tomcat server, and open it up. You can see this download. Go to the download, and if you go down, you will find this zip file. So you download this zip file and wait for a few seconds. You can see it's downloaded. I already have downloaded it, so let me try to show you. So go to the folder download, and here you can see today we have downloaded it, but earlier also I have downloaded it on 13th, and here you can see on 28th it is also downloaded, and for the 13th I have extracted it out here, and inside this I made a small change. So when you are downloading it for the first time, try to extract it out, and then go inside this folder where you have extracted it out, and go inside the configuration folder and open up this Tomcat users. So if you double click on it, it will open up. So there we need to add one user here so that we can access the deployment things. Okay, so you can see this at line number 38 I have added this user. So in order to access the deployment portal on the Tomcat, you have to add a user with your username and the password and the roles. So that is what I have did here in this file. In the Tomcat user file, I have added this line which is saying that I am going to create one user with the username as root and the password as root, and these are the roles that this user has. And if you go above, you can see these roles, what this role is stands for. So this manager GUI allows access to the HTML GUI and the status pages, and the manager script role allows access to the HTTP APIs and the status pages. So that is why we have included these roles, so that we can access our APIs once the deployment is successful on the external server. You can see this. So this is the one part that you need to make the changes in. Now close it out, and what you have to do is, in order to start this Spring Apache Tomcat server, you have to go to this bin folder. So let me again try to remind you what you have to do. Once you have downloaded the Apache Tomcat, extract it out, go to the configuration folder, go to the Tomcat users and add that change, add the users with these roles. Now, in order to start this Tomcat server, let me try to first go to the application, and let me try to stop this application, because the default port for the Tomcat external server is also 8080. So that is why I'm just stopping it. So how you can start your Tomcat server, how you can start your Tomcat external server is, you have to come to this bin folder, and inside this bin folder you will find many of the batch files, or you can say bat files. So there is a one bat file which is startup. You have to double click on it. It will start up your Tomcat server. So double click on it and wait for a few seconds. You can see this Tomcat server is started, and the default port for this Tomcat server is also 8080. So just wait for a few seconds, and uh, you can see one Spring Boot application is also running. I will show you why it is running, because I already have deployed one Spring Boot application here. So so our this Tomcat server is up, and let me try to access this Tomcat server and try to show you how it is looking like. So go to the browser and go to this HTTP localhost 8080 and enter it, and here you can see this is the home page for the Tomcat server. Now in order to deploy your application or your WAR file, you have to go to this manager app. Go to the manager app, and here it will ask you for the username and password that we have set it here in the Tomcat users in the configuration folders, right? Let me try to show you. So if we'll go to this configuration folder here in the Tomcat users, you have to set that user with the username and the password and the roles, so that you can access this manager app. Now you have to provide that username and the password. So what we have set there, the username was root and the password is also root. So here I have provided the password as root. Now let me try to sign in here, and once you will sign in, you can see a lot of applications are already deployed. So you can see this is one of the application that I have deployed here, which was running in this terminal. You can see this when we have started the Tomcat. You can see now how you can download your how you can deploy your WAR file here to the external server. So it is very simple. Once you will access this manager app, you will find this option to deploy, or you can see this option of deploying the WAR file. So you just choose your WAR file that you want to deploy. So just choose it, and where you have created the application, go there and try to deploy your WAR file, which is generated inside the target folder. So go to the project September, and let me try to modify the date. Here the WAR file is, and if you'll go inside the target folder, you will find this WAR file. Let me try to zoom it for you. So you can see this. So select this WAR file, and now before deploying it, let me try to show you what all WAR files we have deployed, or what all application we have deployed here. So here you can see we have the manager, host manager, example, and document. These are already provided by the Tomcat itself, and this is the one Spring Boot application I have deployed. And apart from that, there is nothing. Okay, so when we are going to deploy this war file, one war file will be, or one application will be deployed here, and you can access it. So you have to choose this war file and you have to deploy it. So just deploy it and just wait for a few seconds. You can see here it is loading. And once it is deployed, you will find your war file here. So just click on it, and here comes the URL for your application. Now in this application, we have developed one API which was /var. So you have to provide that external URI which is var and enter it. And here you can see we are able to get the uh, string that we are returning from this API, which is var file deployment is successful. So this is how you can deploy your var file. So this is the difference between jar and var files, from starting from the basic differences to this, like starting from the purpose of the jar and var files to the folder structure and to the deployment. So everything we have discussed about the differences between the jar and var files. So if you like the video, please hit the like button and please subscribe the channel for more such content. Thanks.